Okay, and welcome back. We're going to spend an hour talking to someone who is a first-time visitor to the program, Don Nikola, who writes for the Idaho Observer, also hosts radio programs in his own right, and is a unique and accomplished researcher who has a number of different areas. In other words, this man does his homework. Unlike a lot of people who just skim around the internet looking for tidbits and cobble them together, Don Nikola is a researcher's researcher. Well, okay, and we're back. Interesting conversation with Don Nikola. And Don, you are a researcher, and I made that point at the beginning of the program. We talked off-air about this a couple days ago. And you've got a lot of things in your basket, so to speak. One of the most fascinating topics, certainly for me and many of our listeners, is Nikola Tesla. And one can only imagine this man out of time, as they called him, a man who clearly was connected to the universe in ways that few mortals are, would say about the travesty that we observe around us today.
Oh, sure. Let me say this. When I first found out about Tesla, and it was much later on in life, than in school, I'd never heard his name once mentioned in school.
Isn't that amazing? All you hear is Edison, Edison, Edison.
And Bell, and
Sure.
Benjamin Franklin.
And Marconi, yeah.
And I always wondered, when we were scolded not to stand out in the middle of an electrical storm, how he managed to fly a kite with a key and didn't get electrocuted.
The damnedest thing.
So, we were sold those stories, and they didn't even make sense. Or, once you delve into things like electricity or electronics, and you understand how it moves, it's like, where do these stories come from?
Right.
Right. I became interested in Tesla's science, first of all, and I was just utterly amazed at the number of inventions he had. And then I began questioning why it was all suppressed. And I really started digging into his work when I started looking at the formation of the Federal Reserve and its relationship to the charges that were brought about in 1941 and 1942 with the Trading of the Enemy Act, charges that were brought against Union Banking Corporation and W.A. Harriman or Brown Brothers Harriman.
Sure.
And that whole banker clan.
Union Bank was Prescott Bush.
Yes. So I began doing some research on the appearance of these individuals, the bankers, in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And I started discovering some startling facts, and I wondered why nothing was ever done about this. Well, of course, we're told how government works and how these things sometimes come to pass, but it was obvious that these things were orchestrated and basically shoved down our throats, whether we liked it or not.
Correct.
And, not to spend the whole program on that topic, I found so many anomalies in the passenger manifest of these bankers 10 years prior to the setting up of the Federal Reserve. We're talking about 7 to 10 years before Jekyll Island.
Example, please.
Well,
anomalies in the passenger manifest.
The first arrival, without giving the exact date, I think it was somewhere around October 6th, or let's say October of 1903. Paul Warburg appeared in New York City,
mm-hmm.
and he identified himself as an American. Now, I thought he was a German. And he gave an address in New York City, and he stated that he was a banker, and there was a physical description, and, he was an American. That was a surprise to me. I didn't understand that. Having read Creature from Jekyll Island, G. Edward Griffin, a great book on the whole event, I continued looking for more records, and I found that he made another trip in 1905. Again, he was an American. Again, he used the same address, but he was a merchant this time. He wasn't a banker. And I became very interested now in seeing a pattern of what appeared to be deceit. Now, in 1906, all of a sudden he claims to the INS that he had never been to America. It was his first trip, and he was a German citizen born in Hamburg.
Ah, Mr. Warburg.
Okay, so the records exist, and these are government records. So I thought, well, how could we let a German man do this, to our country?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this was it was a setup from the get-go, and they knew about it. And he was meeting and traveling with some very influential people, Harry Sachs, the Harrimans. He was traveling with James Loeb, and well, let's go back to Warburg for a second. And then in his next trip, again, he was an American. This was in 1910, 1911, 1912. He went. He even became a naturalized citizen, and he cited a circuit court in, I believe it was in Brooklyn, New York. But here he goes from being an American, and then he goes back to a German, and then he's an American, and then he's naturalized, and it was just lie after lie after lie. And I began looking at the other bankers and just examining the records of how many of these people were traveling together, and they were sometimes in groups of 10, 20, 30 of these people. So these meetings were going on overseas. Most of the time, I believe they were in Hamburg, although once you get to Europe, you can pretty much go wherever you want.
So the looting of America was well planned out in advance of the announcement of the Federal Reserve and the hustle that ensued thereafter. This goes way back. Yeah,
it was already going on.
Yeah, and an awful lot of them. Interesting group of names there. Goes back to the money people again. Every time. All right, stand by. We'll continue in just a couple minutes with Mr. Don Nikola. Okay, welcome back. Talking with Don Nikola about a number of interesting things. And the sellout that we commonly call the Fed today was a well-planned takeover of the United States by a group of a special interest group which has a history of financial control and manipulation of nations and, in fact, much of the planet. So that's fascinating, and I'm not sure how that related to Tesla, but go ahead, Don.
Oh, it relates to Tesla.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, for expediency, let's assume that I can basically prove the same things that I'm describing about Warburg and some of these other bankers. The same anomalies appear about their origin. I became interested in what Tesla's association might be. I was suspicious that there was a plot to give this technology to Russia and definitely to Germany, and that there was somebody pulling the strings in this matter. So I began researching Tesla's family, and most of the people who know about Tesla's background know that he was a Serb, although he was born in Lika province, which is what today is now modern-day Croatia. At the time, he was born near the Austro-Hungarian Empire, so in effect he was really an Austrian citizen. Quite a mix of
it is.
details there.
Yeah.
His father was a priest. He's often referred to as a minister, but it was Orthodox Christianity practiced in that area. And although he was a Catholic priest, and he did spend some time at the Vatican, which afforded Nikola the opportunity to visit the library there at the Vatican and look at some very, very secret technological discoveries that had been stored there.
At what age, approximately, would this have been in his life?
Well, it would probably have been in his teen years. It could have occurred, from as young as 4 years old, because he was already showing remarkable ability at that young age.
Who would have taken him to the Vatican? How would he have gotten there?
His father. His father would
because
have.
Because of the father being in the church, and so
yes.
He would have had cachet and just taken him down there.
Yes, exactly. Now, Tesla...
That's pretty amazing. The church must have recognized at that time something extraordinary in that young man to allow him access to anything close to top secret documentation.
Sure. At the age of 4, he had invented, by watching a water wheel, he had invented a wheelless sort of water wheel, if you want to call it that. It didn't have the normal paddles that you.
It was like a gravity kind of a pump, I think. Is what you're talking about.
Yes. And, that story is circulated all over the place, and it's been talked about in every book, but at 4 years old, that's quite a feat. It became...
I didn't do it till I was 5, so I can attest to that.
I didn't do it till I was 6. But that concept later on became the foundation for his bladeless turbine engine.
Right.
So, he showed genius at a young age. Now, he had worked for the Edison telephone companies in various parts of Europe, and so he became very adept at foreign languages as well. I mean, he could speak German, he spoke the Serb dialect, I'm sure he picked up the Austrian dialect, and Italian, French, and English. And so by the time he came to the United States, in the early 1870s, he was a multilinguist. He could speak 7 languages, and he was absolutely brilliant when it came to science. Now, what I was interested in is how he was able to come to the United States and land a job with Edison right away. And Edison...
May I go back just for a moment, Don?
Sure.
The issue of young Nikola Tesla going to the Vatican and having been granted access to pretty amazing documentation, is this common in the literature?
Not in most books, no.
I have not come across it before. All right, go ahead, please.
Well, when he came to the United States, he began working for Edison on the concept of alternating current, and Edison was more on the path of direct current, and he disproved that. And in fact, he had solved a major problem for Edison, and Edison was just toyed with him and actually insulted him and said, you have no sense of humor, and he lost quite a bit of money as a bonus for solving this problem. So he struck out on his own and went to work. He had met a few investors, J.P. Morgan, George Westinghouse, John Jacob Astor, throughout his career. These men put up big bucks to get him researching. Simultaneously, he was working for the U.S. government. He did some work on the East Coast in New York. They had him in Colorado Springs quite a bit. And I became interested in how he managed his affairs while he was in Colorado Springs. How did he keep all these labs going in New York? One lab was destroyed, totally burned down to the ground, and he lost all of his life's work. And he basically had to start from scratch again.
Well, it was pretty obviously arson, wasn't it?
Yes. And he wasn't getting credit for a lot of his inventions. He was patenting these inventions. It was obvious that they were his. They were a direct result of his research, and there was no one else on the planet who could come close to what he was doing. And I became very interested in how Marconi was given the patent for
inventing the radio.
The radio and wireless telegraphy, okay? And I came upon a document. This document is on the web, and it was a commission by Rear Admiral Francis J. Higginson to have Tesla build a telegraphic wireless system on light vessel number 66, which was 60 miles off of Nantucket Shoals. Now, Nantucket Shoals, believe it or not, is very near to Walker's Point. And I became interested in the proximity to Walker's Point.
That is a little flag, yeah.
Yeah, and I hear some music here. Are we going into another break?
We will. We're going to do a break. We'll come right back and hear more about this. This is called research, folks.
Yes.
This is fascinating. Be right back with Don Nikola in a minute.